Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to stand before you today to discuss something that resonates deeply with every one of us. We've all had moments in life where we felt like we were waiting for something, waiting for a breakthrough, waiting for an answer, waiting for a dream to come to fruition, only to find that our expectations and reality don't align. But what happens when God's clock doesn't match ours? God's timing operates on a dimension far beyond our understanding, shaped by an eternal perspective that differs radically from our finite human grasp of time. As humans, we live in a world structured by hours, days, months, and years. Our lives are dominated by schedules, deadlines, and plans, all of which are grounded in the flow of time as we perceive it. We look at time as a resource that is constantly slipping through our fingers, something to be controlled, measured, and optimized. From the moment we wake up to the moment we rest, we are in pursuit of progress, success, and fulfillment, all within the boundaries of our limited lifespan. But God is not confined by these boundaries. He exists outside of time in a realm where the beginning and the end are seen all at once. To him, there is no past, present, or future in the way we understand it. He is the Alpha and Omega, the one who exists beyond our clocks and calendars. His view of time is expansive, eternal, and boundless. What may seem like a delay to us is simply a part of his eternal plan, unfolding in perfect synchronization with his purpose. While we might feel frustrated or anxious when things don't happen according to our desired schedule, God is never rushed. He does not operate according to human urgency, but according to divine timing, which is precise, purposeful, and intentional. From our perspective, this can be deeply challenging. We live in a culture of immediacy where everything is available at the click of a button. We expect instant results, and when they don't come, we feel as though something has gone wrong. However, God's ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His timing is woven into a larger tapestry of purpose, far greater than our immediate desires. We are often focused on the here and now, on what we want to happen today, tomorrow, or next year. But God is orchestrating a divine plan that spans generations, transcending our individual moments and weaving them into the grander story of his kingdom. This can be especially difficult when we are waiting on something we believe to be good, a promise, a breakthrough, a dream. We can become restless, even questioning God's faithfulness when things don't unfold as we expect. Yet God's timing is never accidental or arbitrary. Each moment of waiting is infused with purpose, and often that purpose is one of preparation. The frustration of delay, often our impatience, comes from our limited perspective. We see delay as denial, but God sees it as preparation. As human beings, it's natural for us to become frustrated when things don't happen as quickly as we hope or expect. We live in a world that values speed and efficiency. If something takes too long, we assume something is wrong. When it comes to our spiritual lives, this mindset often transfers over, leading us to believe that when God seems silent or slow, he's withholding something from us. We interpret the delays as denials. But the truth is, God's delays are not a sign of rejection. Rather, they are moments of divine preparation. From our limited viewpoint, all we see is the passing of time. We see the opportunity slipping away, the potential fading, and we become anxious, wondering if God is really listening to our prayers. The frustration grows because we are often focused solely on the end result. We want the job, the relationship, the healing, the breakthrough, but we rarely consider what God is doing in us during the waiting period. What we see as stagnation is often a season of God molding us into the person we need to be to receive what we're asking for. This misunderstanding leads to internal conflict. When we don't see the manifestation of our desires, we can mistakenly believe that God is ignoring us or has changed his mind. But God is not in the business of broken promises. His delays are not denials. In fact, they are signs of his grace and wisdom. Often what we are asking for may be good, but we may not be ready to handle it. The delay is not a reflection of our worth or his willingness to bless us, but a sign that there's more work to be done behind the scenes, both within us and around us. Consider the story of Joseph. He had grand dreams of leadership as a young man, but before he ever reached that position, he spent years in slavery and prison. From the outside, it may have looked like God had abandoned him, but those years were crucial in preparing Joseph for the destiny ahead. What Joseph couldn't see at the time was that God was not just preparing him for the palace, but also preparing the palace for him. In the same way, God's delays in our lives are often seasons of preparation. The frustration we feel is a sign that we're focused on the destination, but God is focused on our journey, on refining our character, building our faith, and aligning us with His perfect plan. The purpose in the waiting period is a time of growth, alignment, and refinement. God uses these moments to prepare us for what He has planned. In the process of waiting, we often overlook the profound work God is doing beneath the surface. We tend to focus on the end goal, the answered prayer, the fulfilled promise, or the breakthrough without recognizing the significance of the journey itself. However, God sees waiting as an essential part of His plan for our growth and transformation. It's not a passive period of inactivity. Rather, it's a time when He is shaping us to be in alignment with His purpose, preparing us to handle the blessings or responsibilities that lie ahead. Waiting stretches us. It forces us to confront our impatience, our need for control, and our desire for immediate gratification. These moments of discomfort reveal areas where we may need growth, whether it's in our faith, character, or even our perspective. We live in a culture that celebrates instant results and quick success, but God values the slow, intentional process of transformation. In the waiting, He's refining us, pruning the parts of our lives that aren't in alignment with His will. Sometimes He is teaching us patience, humility, or resilience. Other times He's exposing our hidden fears, insecurities, or areas of unbelief that need to be addressed before we can step into what He has for us. More importantly, waiting aligns our hearts with God's timing. While we may be eager to rush ahead, God is patient, ensuring that everything is in place at the right time. Imagine receiving a blessing prematurely before you're fully prepared to manage it. It could easily turn into a burden rather than a gift. The waiting period is often God's way of ensuring that we are not only able to receive the promise, but also to steward it well. Just as a farmer waits for the right season to harvest his crops, God waits until the soil of our hearts is ready to bear the fruit He's promised. During these times, God is also at work orchestrating circumstances beyond what we can see. He's aligning people, opportunities, and situations that are crucial for the fulfillment of His plan. Sometimes the delay is not because we aren't ready, but because the circumstances or people around us need to fall into place. It's in the waiting that God prepares not just us, but the entire context for what He's about to do. When we shift our focus from the frustration of delay to the purpose in the waiting, we begin to see the beauty of God's process. We realize that He is using every moment of stillness, every pause in our plans, as a moment to prepare us for the promise. Each day in the waiting is a step closer to becoming the person He's called us to be, fully ready to step into what He has prepared. Trusting in God's sovereignty even when we don't understand, we must trust that God's timing is perfect because His perspective is higher than ours. One of the most challenging aspects of faith is trusting God when things don't go according to our plans or timeline. It's easy to have faith when everything is moving smoothly, but true trust is developed in seasons of uncertainty when God's timing doesn't match ours and we can't see the full picture. In those moments, our natural response is to ask questions. Why is this happening? Why is this taking so long? Did God forget me? But these questions stem from our limited human perspective. What we often fail to grasp is that God, in His sovereignty, sees far beyond what we can comprehend. His timing is not only perfect, but purposeful, even when it doesn't make sense to us. We live in the present, confined by the boundaries of time and space. Our understanding is shaped by the here and now, what's in front of us, what's happening today, and what we hope for tomorrow. But God, in His infinite wisdom, operates outside of time. He sees the past, present, and future all at once. He knows the full tapestry of our lives, how every thread connects and how every season is intricately woven together. His view is not limited by the short term. He sees the eternal. What may seem like a setback or delay to us is, in fact, a carefully crafted part of His divine plan. Trusting in God's sovereignty means surrendering our need for immediate understanding. It means accepting that at times we won't have all the answers, and that's okay. Our faith is not in knowing all the details, but in knowing the one who holds all things together. Proverbs 3:5 reminds us to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. This verse is a powerful reminder that our understanding is limited and often flawed. We see through a narrow lens, but God sees the whole picture. His perspective is infinitely greater, and his plans for us are always good, even when the path doesn't look the way we expected. When we trust in God's sovereignty, we acknowledge that he knows better than we do. It's about releasing control, letting go of the need to force outcomes, and allowing God to work in his way and his time. The story of Lazarus in John 11 illustrates this so well. Jesus delayed going to Lazarus when he heard he was sick. To everyone around him, it seemed as though he was too late. Lazarus had died. But Jesus knew that this delay was not about the timing of death, but the timing of resurrection. His purpose was to reveal a greater glory that no one could have imagined. What looked like a delay to those around him was actually a divine setup for a miracle. This is the essence of trusting in God's sovereignty. We may not always understand why he delays, but we can trust that he is never too late. He is always working things out for our good and his glory, even when the journey takes longer than we expected. God's timing is not about convenience, but about completeness. His plans are far more intricate and profound than our immediate desires, and he knows exactly when and how to bring them to fulfillment. Our role is to trust him, to release our need for control, and to rest in the truth that his timing is perfect, even when it doesn't match ours. Faith in the unseen. Just because we don't see movement doesn't mean God isn't working. Faith calls us to trust what God is doing behind the scenes. One of the most difficult aspects of faith is believing in what we cannot see. We live in a world where results are measured by tangible evidence. If we don't see progress or immediate results, we're conditioned to believe that nothing is happening. But faith, by its very nature, asks us to go beyond what is visible and to trust in the unseen. It requires us to hold on to the promises of God, even when there's no outward sign that anything is changing. This is where the true test of faith lies, not in the moments when everything is going as planned, but in those seasons when we are tempted to believe that nothing is happening. In our human nature, we often equate silence or inactivity with inaction. When we don't see doors opening, when prayers seem unanswered, and when circumstances remain the same, doubt creeps in. We wonder if God is really working on our behalf or if he's forgotten us altogether. But scripture reminds us in 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we walk by faith, not by sight. This means that our trust in God is not based on what we see or experience in the natural, but on the belief that he is actively working, even when we cannot perceive it. Faith in the unseen requires us to shift our perspective from the immediate to the eternal. It's about trusting that God is orchestrating events in ways that may be invisible to us now, but will be revealed in his time. Just because we don't see movement doesn't mean that nothing is happening. Think of a seed planted in the ground. For weeks or even months, nothing seems to be happening above the surface. But beneath the soil, that seed is breaking open, roots are forming, and growth is taking place. Eventually, that seed breaks through the ground, and what seemed like inactivity is revealed to have been a period of vital preparation. The same principle applies to our lives. Often the most significant work God does happens in the quiet, hidden places where we can't see what he's doing. In those moments, it's easy to grow discouraged, but this is where faith comes in. Faith allows us to trust that God is aligning everything for our good. He is working behind the scenes in ways we cannot yet comprehend, preparing opportunities, transforming hearts, and positioning us exactly where we need to be. Consider the Israelites at the Red Sea. From their perspective, they were trapped with no visible way forward. There was no sign of deliverance, and they could have easily given in to fear and despair. But while they couldn't see it, God was already working on their behalf, preparing to part the sea and lead them to freedom. Their miracle wasn't visible to them until the exact moment it needed to be. This is often how God works in our lives. He's preparing breakthroughs, aligning divine encounters, and setting the stage for his glory to be revealed. But it's not always visible to us in the moment. Faith in the unseen also means trusting that God's timing is perfect, even when we don't understand the delay. Just because we don't see the answer yet doesn't mean God isn't preparing it. He may be aligning circumstances or refining us to be ready for what he's bringing into our lives. God's ways are not our ways, and his timeline is often different from ours. What may feel like inactivity is often a time of deep preparation, both for us and for the circumstances around us. Ultimately, faith calls us to believe in what God is doing even when there's no visible evidence. It asks us to hold on to his promises, trusting that he is at work behind the scenes, orchestrating his will in our lives. The absence of visible progress doesn't mean the absence of divine activity. God's hand is always moving, and in the fullness of time, what has been hidden will be revealed. Our responsibility is to keep believing, keep trusting, and keep walking by faith, not by sight. Our need to control outcomes is often a barrier to receiving God's best. We must learn to surrender our timeline to his perfect plan. As human beings, we have an innate desire to control our lives. We plan, strategize, and often manipulate situations to achieve the outcomes we want. We create timelines for our goals, envision milestones we hope to reach, and hold on to the belief that we can manage every aspect of our future. While there is wisdom in setting goals and working diligently, the problem arises when our need for control becomes a barrier to trusting God's plan. The truth is, control gives us a false sense of security, but it also limits our ability to fully embrace the greatness God has in store for us. When we are overly focused on controlling outcomes, we often limit what God can do in our lives. We become so fixated on a specific result or deadline that we leave little room for God to intervene or redirect us according to his higher purpose. The need for control creates anxiety and frustration, especially when things don't go as planned. We become stressed when our timelines aren't met, angry when doors close, and doubtful when we don't see immediate results. This desire to control is often rooted in fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, or even the fear that God's plan might be different from our own. But here's the paradox: the more we try to control, the less we experience the fullness of what God wants to do in us and through us. Releasing control is an act of surrender, acknowledging that while we have our plans, God's plans are ultimately better. Proverbs 16:9 says, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." This means that while we can and should plan, we must recognize that God's direction may take us places we hadn't anticipated, places that are far greater than what we could have imagined on our own. Learning to release control is about trusting that God's wisdom, timing, and perspective far exceed our own. It's about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and that we don't need to. When we let go of the need to micromanage every detail, we open ourselves to divine possibilities that we could never have orchestrated in our own strength. God doesn't just want us to experience good things, he wants us to experience the best. But his best often comes in unexpected ways and at unexpected times. Consider the story of Sarah and Abraham. God had promised them a child, but when the fulfillment of that promise didn't happen according to their timeline, they took matters into their own hands. Sarah urged Abraham to have a child with Hagar, thinking she could control the situation and speed up God's promise. But their attempt to control the outcome resulted in complications and pain. It wasn't until they surrendered to God's timing that Isaac, the child of promise, was born. This story reminds us that rushing ahead of God or trying to force his hand often leads to unintended consequences. What we control out of impatience can never compare to what God provides out of his perfect timing. Surrendering control requires faith. It calls us to trust that even when things don't make sense, God is working all things together for our good. Romans 8:28. It requires us to release our deadlines, our preconceived notions of how things should happen, and the anxiety that comes with uncertainty. Instead of clinging to our plans, we must place them in God's hands, believing that he is faithful to fulfill his promises in his way and his time. This doesn't mean we become passive or stop planning altogether. Rather, it's about holding our plans loosely, allowing God to direct our paths, and accepting his will, even when it diverges from our expectations. When we release control, we step into a deeper relationship with God, one that is built on trust and surrender. We experience peace, knowing that we don't have to carry the weight of orchestrating our own lives. God is in control, and he is both sovereign and good. By letting go, we make room for his perfect plan to unfold, one that far surpasses anything we could ever control on our own. Thank you.